In this lesson, let's improve our front-end validation. We're going to make it happen in real time, as users will enter values in input fields. So each error message will appear as user types under corresponding input field. Firstly, I'm going to remove this session cookie that has been set after we have registered user in the previous lesson, and also remove all the records from the users table. Here's what we're gonna do to implement real-time validation. Let's jump back into the editor. Inside the register page component, here I'm going to declare a couple more reactive variables that are going to contain corresponding error messages for each field, email, password, as well as password confirmation. Then we're gonna declare additional computed property with the name hasError, and this computed property will tell us if form contains at least one validation error, it will be true. If form will be invalid. And we can check it by using the following expression. We're gonna check if at least one of these variables will contain true the value, which means this whole expression is going to produce true the value. In the whole computed property hasErrors will be true, and then this property we're going to use for the disabled attribute. For the submission button right here, I'm gonna add disabled attribute and use computed property hasErrors. So what this will do is it will disable this button if this form will have at least one validation error. For now, I'm going to assign validation error to one of these variables to quickly check result. But we won't be able to see any visual changes even if this button will be disabled, because we have to add a couple more CSS classes for disabled state of the button. Tailwind CSS makes it very easy for us. We just have to add couple classes with disabled prefix, like so. I'm going to make disabled button 50% transparent, and also we're going to change the cursor when users are going to hover over cursor on the disabled button. And there we go. Now in the browser we're seeing how styles of the disabled button are changed. Next, we need to have a way to specify validation errors for each input field, and to do so, we'll add additional prop called error, which will be optional, and that is why I'm using question mark in here. This prop will be of a string type. And now to render this error message, I'm going to add additional paragraph under the input field right here, which will be shown only when the error prop will contain error message. Let's interpolate value of the error variable right here. We're going to decrease the font of this message, make it red with a shade of 600, and for dark mode, we're gonna make the text color red with a shade of 400. So before testing this out, we need to pass this error prop into a form field component for the email field. I'm gonna do so and specify email error variable. And there we go, we got an error message right under the email field. And if I'm going to change this error message, it is going to be reflected in the UI right away. We're gonna do the same with other input fields, with password field, as well as password confirmation field. Each of those fields are also going to take error prop with the corresponding error message. Alright, cool, but what about real-time validation? We need to show the corresponding error message as the user will type, and for that we're gonna use watchers and watch for changes in each reactive variable that stores value of the input fields. So for example, for the email input field, we're going to watch for the changes inside email reactive variable, and if this value will change, we're gonna call this callback, which in turn will take the updated value of the email input field, and all we have to do in here is basically apply validation to this new value by using validate email function. And if this function is going to return an error, we're gonna store it inside email error reactive variable, so that UI will be updated and the error message will be shown automatically. Let's see how it works. The moment I'm gonna type in invalid value in the email input field, we're going to see the error message appears right below this field. It works as we expect to. Let me copy over this whole chunk of code and register watchers for the rest of fields. In the second case, we're going to watch for changes in the password reactive variable and apply validation by using validate password function. And finally, we need one more watcher to watch for changes in password confirmation field. Here we have to use validate password confirmation function, which by the way takes two arguments, first of which will be current value inside password field, and the second argument which will be the value from the password confirmation field, because this function is going to compare both of these values and return an error in case those values will be different. Time to check it one more time. Let me populate values of these fields, and as you can see, corresponding error messages appear below corresponding fields. So our real-time form validation works as expected, but there is a problem. Even if we have entered valid values into each field, the sign up button still remains disabled. Let's fix it. Let's try to cast this whole value of the has errors computed property into boolean like this, and check it out one more time. This time, if I'm going to fill in valid values into each input field, we can submit this form and register the user. We have been redirected to the playlist page, which means the user has been registered. And since now we are applying real-time validation as user types, we no longer need to apply additional validation right before we're gonna submit the form. Inside handle register function, I'm going to remove all the code related to validation inside of this function. The validation is taken care in real time thanks to registered watchers. Let's go through this flow one more time. So we are disabling sign up button in case we have at least one validation error. And if so, this has errors computed property is going to contain true value. And each input field has watcher registered, which means if value of this input field changes, we're gonna reapply validation and store the result in the corresponding reactive variable. And since those variables that contain validation errors are reactive, our UI is going to automatically be updated and show corresponding validation errors below appropriate fields. And by the way, we no longer need this error variable because this variable has been used to show validation error message at the beginning of the form. But now that we are showing validation errors below each input field, we can remove this block with error message. Alright, cool, let's try to register user once again. Before, I'm going to remove session cookie as well as records from the user's table. Actually, let's fix another thing. As you might have noticed, even if we have not entered any values into any field, we're seeing that the sign up button is enabled, which should be disabled in this case. And to fix it, I'm going to change has errors computed property. Let's rename this property to isFormValid. And then we're gonna assign the result of this expression to the has errors constant, so that this constant will contain true if at least one validation error will be present. And then I'm gonna add additional constant all fields field, which will be true when all fields will have values. And finally, we're going to return the result of the following expression, which will indicate whether the form is valid or not. If there will be no validation errors and all fields will contain values, in this case, the form is considered valid. Let's also use this isFormValid computed property inside the disabled attribute to properly disable and enable form submission button. So if form is not valid, we're gonna disable this button, otherwise it will be enabled. At the end, let's do one final check. Let's make sure that proper validation errors will be shown in real time as I'm gonna be typing values in input fields. And eventually, when the form will be valid, I can submit this form and register a new user. As you can see, it has worked. We have been redirected to the playlists page. And sure enough, new record has been added to the users table.